This is Michael from Blue Sky Bio. I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us for the live video training. We're going to wait just a minute to let people join and log in, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us for the live video training. My name is Michael Saltzman. I'm the Director of Guided Surgery at blueskybio.com. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the QA box. Please don't hesitate. Questions are welcome. And also, please make sure to enter your details into the webinar attendance form in order to make sure you get the CE credit for the presentation. The link to the attendance form was sent out with the viewing links, and it also appears in the comment section below the video window that you're watching now. A little bit of background about Blue Sky Bio and Blue Sky Plan before we jump right into the software. Blue Sky Bio, if you're familiar or not, is a dental implant company. As you can see on the screen right now, on our website, we have this different implant systems. You're encouraged, obviously, to check them out. The software works with all implant systems, all guided surgical kits, and you could order surgical guides through laboratories that can manufacture surgical guides compatible with all implant systems. One of the things that really makes us unique in terms of the software is that not only is it the software, but we have a complete system regarding guided surgery. As you can see on the screen right now, in addition to the software, which we have in the PC and Mac version, we also have a direct cut keyless guided surgical kit. We manufacture over 50 or 60 metal cylinders, which could be used to make surgical guides for all systems, all drilling systems. We have the options, which we're not going to get into this presentation, but we have options for laboratories to get on board and to manufacture their surgical templates with the software. We also have options for clinicians to make their own surgical templates. We obviously have training that's connected to the software. There's recorded webinar presentations. As you could see, there's video tutorials. There's a help file that's available here and also in the software. We're very available with any questions via contact information. So really, not only do we have the software that we develop and distribute, but there's a whole system surrounding it to complement and to supplement it. With the free software and with the direct cut drill system, essentially, we've removed both significant financial barriers to getting started with guided surgery. In the past, you've had to buy software, you'd have to buy a significant guided surgical kit, and even before you get started, you'd have significant upfront costs. With Blue Sky Plan and with our other options, we've essentially removed both of those financial barriers. Okay, we're going to jump into the software. The purpose of the training session today is to get you more up to speed with the software. The good news is that usually an hour training session is sufficient to get a dentist that really hasn't used any treatment planning software in the past to get them familiar and comfortable using Blue Sky Plan to the extent that they could go ahead and play with it, the software, use it, load cases, and get started with guided surgery after a relatively short training period. Some of the topics that we're going to be discussing and going over is DICOM images, what they are and how to load them into the software, the different views that we're currently viewing on the screen, the panoramic curve, the 3D view, how to manipulate the different views using your mouse functionality, placing implants, and different other tools for measurements and functionality that's in the software. So we're going to get started. Again, if you have questions, put them into the QA box and I'll address them as we go along. Otherwise, let's go. Let's go. The first thing you want to be doing when you're loading a new case is loading the DICOM images. If you have the software installed on your computer, then even if you navigated to the folder containing your DICOM images, you'll see it'll have the Blue Sky Bio, the Blue Sky Plan logo next to it. And loading a set of DICOM images could be as simple as just double-clicking on any of the files of the DICOMs and bringing it into the software. Now, what we could see here is that the DICOMs is a long list of files. And just so we understand what we're dealing with and we understand how it translates into the software, is that DICOM files are the industry standard of a file system done with a CT scanner. And each file that we have here is essentially a 2D image that was taken by the CT scanner. And the reason there are so many is because the CT scanner is rotating around the central point of rotation, which is the center of the patient. And it's taking many 2D images. And when we load into the software, what the software is doing is it's processing all the images and it's loading it into our different views. It loads it and creates our 3D view. It creates our different slices in our other 2D views. And when we go through the slices, which we're going to get to in just a minute, essentially what we're doing is we're going by slice, we're going through each 2D image and bringing it into view. So to load the DICOMs, you can either double click on a file that you have in a particular folder, or you can open up the software and go to File, New Project. When you go to File, New Project, you're brought to the screen that we're seeing here now. The screen has different shortcut buttons on the top for desktop, documents, downloads. These will quickly access the relevant areas of your computer so that you could find the files that you need, or your CD drive if it's on a CD. You're able to load uncompressed DICOMs into the software. You're able to load compressed DICOMs, which will be a single file instead of being a long list of files because it's compressed into one. And you're able to load a zipped folder without even unzipping it. So if the scan site or wherever the scan is being done sends you a zipped folder, you don't have to unzip it. You could just select it, press the OK button, and the software will pull it from the zipped folder and start loading it. So once you have selected the DICOM set, then it will show you the list of series of different patients or different DICOM series that are found. And this is especially helpful, for example, if you got a CD. Okay, you don't need to go navigating or digging into the CD. You could just have the software. You could select the CD folder and you can have the software search, and it will show you whatever DICOM sets for different patients that it finds. If it finds more than one, then you'll have different horizontal lines showing up here. You could select the patient that you want, and you could press the OK button, which will take us to the next screen. Now, on this screen, what we have is the ability to do two important things. One is to define our relevant field of view. Okay, you don't need a lot of the patient's anatomy that might be included here. And the reason that we want to go ahead and define the relevant field of view is because we want what is relevant to be large and to take up our screen. And also, if you're dealing with a lot of extra data, it could affect your computer's performance. So by defining the relevant field of view, we're helping with those two issues. And how did I do it here? You could see that any of the borders or any of the margins could be grabbed with your mouse, with your left click, and dragged inwards, and that will define your field of view. The other thing that you're able to do here is you're able to reorient the patient. If the patient wasn't facing the right direction or was at an angle during the CT scan, you're able to reorient the patient just by grabbing any of the blue circles in any of the views, and will reorient the patient. Okay, it's a good idea to do the orientation first if you're going to be doing that, because as we just saw, when you reorient the patient, your field of view is reset because you're dealing with a new orientation. Okay, so once you have your relevant field of view, you go ahead and press OK. And we have just loaded, or we are loading the DICOMS into the software. Very good. Now it's loaded. Let's take a look at what we're viewing. What are we viewing? We have 5 different views on the screen. First, I'm just going to give an overview, and then we'll go into more depth and discussion regarding each one and the different functionalities. The bottom right is your PanORX. It's your panoramic view. You have the option to view all the slices together, so it looks more similar to an X-ray, or you have the option of viewing slice by slice shortly. The top right view is our total view. That will show us 360 degrees around an implant or around a particular piece of anatomy. The top view, middle view, is our axial view. That is showing slices stacked like a deck of cards, and we'll be able to go through the slices. We'll be able to go through the deck to do that. The top left view is your cross sections view. Those are showing vertical slices, and we're able to run around the arch of the patient and run and see those vertical slices. And the bottom left view is your 3D view. Now that general overview important is that we could discuss our panoramic curve. The panoramic curve that we see in our top middle view and the axial view is the curve that goes through the patient's ridge. Now, until very recently, the software would put a curve into the software, and then you would need to either redraw it or to update it or to tune the placement of it. One of the recent releases that we've just come out with the software is an intelligent automatic panoramic curve. And what you see on the screen is how the software loaded automatically without me changing the panoramic curve. And the placement of the curve is quite good. It's going through the middle of the patient's ridge as it should. It creates for us a nice panoramic view. The panoramic view is based on the curve. And you could see that if we go ahead and move the curve, that it adjusts and it skews our panoramic view. So the new functionality that we have is that the panoramic curve is drawn automatically. Not only that, if you're dealing with 2 jaws, not only is it drawn automatically for one jaw, but it's drawn automatically for both jaws. And you're able to toggle between the 2 different jaws. And we could see that it's updated the curve. Now for the maxilla, and we have a relevant curve there as well. And you're able to go back and forth between the different curves, depending which jaw you're dealing with. If you want to modify the placement for either one, you could just go ahead and modify the placement by grabbing any of the squares. And if you want to redraw the curve, then that's a possibility as well. In some situations, you might just decide that you want to draw your own curve. Drawing your own curve is done right here by going to draw a dental curve. And then you just run around the arch, placing dots. The software connects the dots and draws your panoramic curve. When you get to the end of the curve that you draw, you could go ahead and double click, and that completes the curve. Now, the placement of the curve is important because based on the curve, the panoramic view is drawn. And also when we're running around the arch to view our cross sections, that's also based on the curve as well. Now, manipulating the curve could also be an important factor when we're trying to identify our different nerves and when we're going to be drawing the nerve as well. As you could see, when I grab the squares and I change the curve, our panoramic button, the view in the bottom right, is adjusting. And it's a good way to be able to identify the nerve so we could color it, which we're going to get to shortly. So let's go into more detail regarding the different views. And what we saw, or what we're seeing, that while we're moving the curve, the panoramic view is actually jumping from two different views. The two different views that we have for the panoramic is a composite panoramic view or a slice panoramic view. And you're able to switch between the two different views by clicking on the third button here. Let's start with our slice view. Right now, what we're viewing is a 1 millimeter thick slice, and the location of the slice is indicated by the yellow panoramic curve in the axial view. As we go through the slices using the up-down arrows on the slider, you can see that the yellow curve is moving. It's moving to show us the location of the 1 millimeter slice that we're viewing in our panoramic view. If instead of viewing a 1 millimeter slice, we decide that we like the other view better and we want a composite view, then we go ahead and click on the button, we switch to composite, and you can see that the middle line is no longer highlighted in yellow. What's highlighted in yellow is the inner and the outer curves, because what we're viewing the composite image of is everything, all the slices between the inner and the outer curve. And we could change the field of view, or we could change the thickness of the composite image by grabbing the circles in the panoramic curve and just dragging them inwards or outwards. Okay, and that will update our panoramic view as well. Now, some basic mouse functionality that works with our panoramic and really works with all of our views is the following. You could use your right mouse button and you could click it and move your mouse backwards and forwards, and that's going to zoom in or zoom out on the image. You could use the wheel of your mouse to push the wheel of the mouse like a button. Don't scroll it, but push it like a button, and you could grab and you can move the image around. If you scroll the wheel of your mouse, then you're going to run through the slices, just like if you're using the slider to the right of the view. And if you use the left mouse button, wherever you click, you could see that these cross lines, the multicolored cross lines, are jumping to that location. But the cross lines, what do they represent? They represent what we're viewing in the other views. So when the cross lines jump to that location, you're essentially updating all the other views to move to that location, and you're able to see the anatomy at that location. Now, keeping that in mind, we could discuss a little bit more about our panoramic view, and then move on to our other views. The panoramic, the top button that we have here in the panoramic view is the same button that we have in the top of every view, and that's to maximize the view to take up your entire screen. When you press it again, it brings it back to where it was. The second button that we have is our slice thickness option. We discussed that each time you go through a slice, you're viewing a 1 millimeter slice. If you wanted to view thinner or thicker slices, you could go ahead and adjust that from that second button right here, and you could choose the distance that you want. The third button we discussed switches between our panoramic composite and our slice view. And the fourth button is a screenshot functionality. It's a very powerful tool that we have. We're going to get into it a little bit more later. But when you have the camera for the screenshot, what it will do, it will add the image that's currently visible in that particular view to a basket, which holds your screenshots. And you could then generate different reports with it or save different data about the patient, and you could PDF it, you could print it, you could export it. So all that information could be done via the screenshot functionality, and we'll discuss that more a bit later. So that's our panoramic view and some comments that we said about the mouse functionality. Let's move on to our tangential view, which is our top right view. The mouse functionality is the same, the zoom in, the zoom out with the right button, you're grabbing the image with the wheel of the mouse, the left mouse button here doesn't update the view. The way to update the view is to scroll using the slider. And another way to do it is you could see in the axial view, you have a green line. You're able to grab the green line and rotate it. And what the green line is doing is it's demonstrating the angle at which we're viewing the tangential view. Again, the tangential view shows us 360 degrees around an implant or around the patient's anatomy, and we could see that we could rotate all the way around. And it's especially helpful, for example, if you place the implant into a bone and you want to make sure that it's placed properly. So that is our tangential view. We have the ability to maximize to take up our screen. We have the same screenshot functionality. And we have the slider like we have in all of our 2D views. Moving on to our axial view. Our axial view is showing us horizontal slices. As we run through the slices, you can watch how the blue line in the bottom right panoramic view and in the top left cross sections view moves while we're going through the slices. And the reason is that the blue line is showing us the location of the slice that we're viewing in the axial view. For those of you who might be joining us a little bit late, if you have questions, you can enter them into the QA chat box. Don't forget to put your details into the webinar attendance form so we can issue the CE credit. Okay, so our axial view is the vertical slices. When we go through the axial view, we see the blue line moving accordingly in our panoramic and in our cross sections. Some of the icons that we have here, the top one maximizes the view. The second one just changes the viewing mode. The third one allows us to control which indicators or which colorful lines we're seeing in the view. Right now we're seeing the indicators for the axial slice and the cross-section slices. And the fourth icon that we have is for screenshots. Moving along to our cross-sections view. Our cross-sections is our top left view. It's showing us vertical slices. As we move through the vertical slices, we could see the 5 multicolored lines moving in the top middle axial view and then the bottom right cross-sections view. As we go through the cross-section slices, we could see that the colorful lines are running on the panoramic curve. We mentioned earlier that's one of the functionalities of the panoramic curve, is it's defining for us the path of the cross-section views. The leftmost line corresponds to our top left view. The rightmost line corresponds to the bottom right cross-section view, and the ones in the middle corresponds to the ones in the middle. We could see here as well that by default there's a 1 millimeter distance between each slice. You could see that by the numbers, 12.5, 13.5. And if we wanted to change that, we could go to the second button that we have and change our slice thickness. The top button maximizes the view to take up our entire screen. And the third button is our screenshot button as well. Going down to our 3D view. The 3D view is the only view that has a little bit of different mouse functionality, and the difference is primarily with the left mouse button. The left mouse button here allows you to grab and to rotate the 3D view. Another way to rotate is by going to the second button that we have here and choosing the desired orientation. Okay, the third button that we have is different volume rendering settings. It's different ways of viewing the 3D view. Here's one that shows us different shades for the bone or for the implants. Some of the popular ones are the shaded bones, what we're looking at now. The bones, which just shows us a surface a white surface of the teeth and the bones together. And the surfaces option as well. Okay, so you can choose which one you like. I usually work on the surfaces, but that's a matter of preference. The fourth button that we have shows us we could turn on different indicators. Okay, you might find the cross-section indicator to be quite helpful. This way, when we're going through our cross-sections, you could see, for example, where in the 3D you're located. So those could be turned on and off from the fourth button. You could check or uncheck the different options. The fifth button we're not going to go into now. It's for merging different data sets. And the fifth button is for screenshots. Okay. Oh, one more important thing about the 3D view is the slider on the bottom. Generally, the sliders that we have on the side of the 2D views is to go through the different slices. The 3D view obviously doesn't have slices, but what the slider is our density threshold. If we raise the density threshold, we'll see less anatomy. We'll see only the more dense anatomy. And if we lower the density threshold, then we'll include even the less dense anatomy, and you can even get to the patient's face and skin. The drop-down that we have here is some defined presets: bone, skin, tooth. It's the same as moving the slider. It just jumps the slider for you to some popular values that will show you different parts of the anatomy. Okay, so to summarize what we've done so far is we've discussed the different views on the screen. We have discussed the mouse functionality, and we have discussed the different buttons next to each view. And we have discussed briefly how to load DICOMS and what DICOMS are. Okay. What we're going to discuss now is drawing or highlighting the nerve. Okay, particularly if you're dealing with the mandible, it's a very good idea to do that. The purpose of doing that is to make sure you don't hit any vital structures, any vital parts of the anatomy. And when you color it or highlight it, not only does it make it more obvious to the eye, it also helps trigger a validation system that we have built into the software that will warn you if the implant is placed too close to the nerve. Prior to drawing the nerve, it's a good idea to identify it. We discussed before how moving the panoramic curve can help identify it. Another way is by flipping through the 2D slices and finding the slice that shows it to you most clearly. While you're drawing the nerve, you're able to actually move through the slices, and we'll pull the nerve either buccal or lingual or whichever way you're moving the slices. We are going to add the nerve by pressing the button here, which has the red plus and the squiggly nerve. Some background information about a couple of functions, how the software is laid out, is you see the add nerve button has the red plus. Next to it is add implant. Next to that is add tooth. And next to that is to add a panoramic curve. This section of the toolbar is to add different elements. To the right of that, you'll see that it has the same icons without the red plus. And what these are for is to toggle different elements on and off. You're not deleting them or adding them, you're just hiding them or unhiding them. Okay, so that's a little bit of information regarding that. For example, if we want to hide, if the colorful indicating lines are in our way, we could just press the button and they disappear, clears up our screen, press it again, and it comes back. So that's some organizational information regarding how the toolbar is structured. Another component that we're going to see pop up when we start drawing our nerve, which is why I'm discussing it now, is that the software has panels. When we press the Add Nerve button, we see the nerve panel open up on the right side. The panels you could think of as a control panel for a particular functionality. When you start using a particular panel, will show up automatically. You can also open different panels by double-clicking on relevant items. For example, double-clicking on the 3D view will open up your surfaces panel. Double-clicking on an implant will open up the implant panel. Most of the implants open up, most of the panels will open up automatically as you need them. And we'll see how we can manipulate them. We could close them. We could rearrange the order as we move forward. But it's important for me to discuss this before we discuss drawing the nerve so that there's an understanding of what we're seeing. Right now, we pressed the Add Nerve functionality, and the nerve panel showed up. We're able to indicate the nerve just by moving along the canal, placing dots as we do that. The software connects the dots and draws the nerve. Okay, we could do that. We could have done this in the cross sections view as well. Now, if we want to start drawing the second nerve, what's important to remember is to press the Add Nerve button on the bottom here. That indicates to the software that we're not just drawing one line that's going to run across the entire screen, but we're starting a second line. And we could see that in the nerve list right up here on the list of the nerve panel, we need 2 entries. And we could draw the second nerve running along the canal. When we're done, we press the Edit Nerve button off. You're able to make some modifications. You could change the color of the nerve. You could change the width. You could hide or unhide the visibility from here as well. And you could lock them in place by using the padlock button here. Otherwise, if lock in place, if you want to modify the placement, you could grab any of the nodes, re-drag them, and update it accordingly. You can also delete by hitting the red X, and it will disappear. Okay, we could see our nerves in the 3D view as well. Another way of doing that, we mentioned that if you double-click the 3D view, your surfaces panel shows up. And we also have a transparency slider for the 3D view where you can make it transparent. So we just demonstrated the functionality of drawing the nerve. We discussed the nerve panel. A couple of notes on the surfaces panel while we have it open. The surfaces panel lists our different surfaces. If we've imported a model or another scan appliance or another DICOMS set, it would show up on the panel as well. The surfaces imported from DICOMS from a CT scan show up here, and surfaces imported from an STL file show up on top. A couple of other cool functionalities that we have here from the surfaces panel is the isolate button. The isolate button, I think, is really helpful. We have it right down here. And when you click the isolate button, you can then click on the surface of what you want to keep, and everything else disappears. Okay, anything not connected to that surface has disappeared. So if we're dealing with the mandible, we have just cleaned it up. If we're merging a scan, then it gives us a good field of view to do the merge. So the isolate panel, the isolate button, I think, is a good functionality. We have in the toolbar, we have an undo button, and we can bring everything back. Another way to bring everything back is we have a button here, reset defaults, which will bring up the CT scan without any changes in it. We also have a cut button, which allows us to cut out or remove particular parts of the 3D view. If we don't want to use isolate, or if it's not appropriate to use isolate, you could just lasso whatever you want to remove, and the software goes ahead and removes it. Okay, we can do this again, and the software goes ahead and removes it. When we're done, we press the cut button again, and it turns off the functionality. I just hit the reset to defaults button, and it brought everything back for the CT scan. Okay, so that's a couple of comments regarding our surfaces panel. Placing an implant is pretty straightforward. First, you might want to identify where you're going to be placing the implants. You could set that up in any of the views. The implant could be dropped into any of the views. Many dentists like dropping into the cross sections view, at least initially. And once you drop it, we'll see you'll be able to go ahead and manipulate it and update it as well. So once you have the position where you're going to be dropping the implant, you could go ahead and press the Add Implant button, the implant with the red plus next to it. And here you're able to choose an implant from the library. We have in the library, we have the Blue Sky Bio implants that are compatible with major systems such as Zimmer, Astra, Nobel, and Straumann. So if you're using any of those systems, then all of the implants are in here as well. And if you're not, you're able to choose the custom implant option, and you're able to put in the dimensions that you like and place the implant that way. So you could choose the implant system you want to be using. You could choose the width of the implants from the bottom left, and then you could choose the relevant implants from the list. You should select the proper orientation for the relevant jaw, and then press the OK button. The implant could be dropped by left clicking, and the implant shows up on the slice. You could grab it and drag it. You could change the positioning, and you could rotate it by grabbing the circle that appears around it and rotate and position the implant. Okay, here we're able to use our different views to see how the placement is. We could use our tangential view, and we could run around the implant, and we could see how the placement is. Okay, we want to make any modifications, we could go ahead and do that. We could look in our panoramic view, either in the slice view, or we could switch to our composite, and we could see the implant there. And the cross sections in 3D views as well. If we want to place a second implant, we could do it this exact same way that we just discussed earlier. Another way to place a second implant, if it's the same implant, is to right-click on the implant. It opened up a drop-down option of different options. If we want, we could hit the duplicate button. It puts a second implant exactly in the same space as the first one, and we could go ahead and grab it and drag it to the location where we want to place the implant. Okay, when you duplicate an implant like we just did now, it duplicates the size of the exact implant that we chose, and it also duplicates the angulation. So if you want to use it for parallel implants, then that's a good option. Whichever implant is clicked on becomes the active implant, and it becomes visible in all our different views and all our different slices. So to summarize, the placing an implant functionality is quite straightforward. You identify the relevant location or slice where you want to place it. You press the Add Implant button. You choose your implant from the list, and it's placed to there. Now, what we saw happen is on the right side, our implants panel has opened automatically, which gives us a lot of different options regarding the implant, and we're also able to access options by right-clicking on the implant. We could see that we now have multiple panels open, and we could toggle between them by hitting the tab for the relevant one. Let's discuss a minute the implant panel, and then we'll discuss some options when you right-click on the implant. And a lot of the options are the same option, just accessible two different ways, and we'll see that. The first thing you're able to do is you could turn on a number to show up next to the implant. Okay, you could change the ID number to whatever you like by double-clicking on it. Dentists often give it a tooth number. Just typing in a new number will change the ID and it will update. And you could toggle the visibility on or off by using the check boxes. Also, any of the check boxes for the entire column could be checked or unchecked by pressing the column header. The implant check boxes are checked. That shows that they're visible currently on the screen. And you also have the option to turn on or off the abutments, which we could add in a minute. And the drill guides, which is the software drill guides. Basically, it's the brown circles that just showed up here on the screen. It's indicating when a surgical guide is fabricated, where the holes in the surgical guide are going to be. We're not going to jump into that now, but just so you know what that is. You also have the implant. You also have the possibility to lock the implant placement to make sure while you're analyzing or doing whatever else you're doing in the software, you don't accidentally move the implant. Implants could be deleted by hitting the red X, which will delete the implant. The transparency of the implant could be controlled from the slider. And it makes, as you could see in the different views, you could decide if you want the implant to be full colored or just in the wireframe. The implant section that we have here shows us the dimensions of the implant. We could press the replace button and it will open up our panel again to choose a new implant. We could press customize, that will allow us to change the dimensions manually. We have the option for the abutments also to hit replace. This opens up the same panel, just to clarify, opens the same panel that we have for the implant, just the different tabs. Yeah, there are tabs here for the implant, abutment, the guide tube, which is the brown circle, and the pin. Okay, you could, if you're doing, especially in the dentist case, you could trim implant a pin to hold the surgical guide in place, or the lab could plant it to hold the surgical guide in place. So if we were discussing the abutment, if we want to add an abutment, you go to select abutment. The abutments that show up here are only the abutments that are compatible with the implant that you have selected, that you have placed, and you could select the relevant abutment for your implant. Okay, now we see in the different views that we have the implant with the abutment. We're not going to go into the guide tube panel. That's more for guide fabrication. We have another video training session scheduled in a week from today on guide fabrication. So if you're interested in that, we're going to be discussing guide fabrication next week. Okay, so that's the implants panel that we have here. Right-clicking on an implant allows us to do many of the same functionalities. You could show the ID, which we currently have checked, or uncheck it, lock the implant, which we discussed, show properties, brings up the implant panel that we have open, add abutment, does just that, it adds the abutment, duplicate, we demonstrated, it duplicates one implant, both the size and the angle. Align width is another way to create parallel implants. If you now use align width on the implant that you selected, you could then click on a second implant and it aligns one implant to be parallel to the second implant. Replace allows a new implant to be selected. Remove deletes it. Pivot controls when you rotate the implant. Are you rotating around the center of the implant or the top of the implant? We have another option to rotate only around the implant axis. Now, what's this for? In the 3D view, if you want to rotate the implant, so let's say you put in an angled abutment, and now you want to rotate the implant to change the angle of the angled abutment. You're not changing the angle, but you're rotating the implant, which will change in which direction the abutment is pointing. So you want to make sure this functionality allows you to rotate the implant without moving it unintentionally. So you have the option that comes up to rotate the implant, and we see how when we rotate it, it changes the angle of the abutment. It's important to remember to turn off that functionality. Let's hide our lines here. Okay, you need to uncheck it after you're done, or else if you want to move the implants, you won't be able to, because that's exactly what it's trying to do. It's trying to allow you to rotate around the axis of the implant without moving it. Okay, deselect turns off prevents the implant from being highlighted, and that's pretty much it. Visibility allows you to turn on and off the implant and or the guide tube. Another way to change the positioning of the implant is directly in the 3D view. When you click on the implant in the 3D view, a widget comes up, as we see now. You could grab the implant and rotate it, or you could grab the implant to move it, or you could rotate it by grabbing any component of the widget and just rotating the implant in any direction that way. Okay, so we pretty much covered everything there is to know about placing implants. To summarize, you press the Add Implant button. It opens up the dialog box. You select the system, you select the width, you select the implant. If you want to put in a custom implant, you go here. This panel also allows you to place an abutment or select an abutment and the guide pins as well. Once it's placed, you could rotate it, you could change the properties, you could duplicate it, you could delete it, all that stuff about placing implants. Another way to place an implant, which leads us into our next topic. Our next topic is adding virtual teeth. Another way to place the implant is actually to plan the case based on the virtual teeth. So if we go ahead and hit the Add Tooth button, it opens up our dialog box. We're able to either add just the crown or we're able to add teeth with roots. You could select the tooth that you want to place, the general size, and then go ahead and click on OK. You click in any view, you modify the tooth placement as you like. The widget that shows up here also allows you to change the width or the length of the tooth. And manipulating the virtual tooth is very similar to manipulating the implant. You have the widget, you could grab, you could drag. You double click on it, it opens up the virtual tooth panel. And here is what we mentioned earlier, that just now, that you're able to treatment plan based on the virtual tooth. So you put the virtual teeth or tooth where you want it, and then you could align a new implant. The software puts the implant into the location to support the crown or to support the virtual tooth that we just planned. Okay, so you can see that we now have the implant and the tooth in place. So here you have different options to control the transparency of the virtual teeth. If you want to see just the outline or the whole tooth, you could remove the tooth, you could align a new implant, which is what we just did. You could add a tooth, you could replace a tooth if you want to put in a different tooth or a different size tooth. And you could also align an existing implant. Instead of placing a new implant, if you had one already placed and you want the software to align it to support the tooth, then you could do it as well. Some other notes about the virtual teeth is we have actually just added the functionality to drop in multiple virtual teeth. Instead of just one, you're able to hold down the shift key and select a few of them and drop them all in at the same time. The reason one is highlighted in darker red is because when you click, it's going to put that tooth in that location, and it's going to put the adjacent teeth adjacent to it accordingly. So just so you know that functionality exists as well. We've also just added in some other great functionality, which we're not going to go into because it's more advanced, but so you know it exists, is you could do a tooth extraction placed on the virtual tooth that you placed. So if you're going to be extracting a teeth, or if you want to segment the tooth, you could place a virtual tooth where you want it. And then via our segmentation panel, you could do a virtual tooth segmentation, and you could extract the tooth based on where the virtual tooth is. Our segmentation panel has a lot of advanced functionality to either remove a tooth or to define the jaw or the bone. Now, just a word about that. One of the reasons that that's been very important to do, and it's something that we've added recently, is if you want to fabricate a bone-supported surgical guide and the bone isn't dense or very thick, it's been in some ways a technological challenge to do that, because you can't offset a bone that doesn't have a good definition in a surgical guide. And until now, was relevant somebody that's very experienced with CAD/CAM technology to go ahead and to fill in the bone and to do all sorts of other things. We built the functionality into the software that it could be done just from Blue Sky, similar to any other guide designing or fabrication, and you don't need that high proficiency in CAD functionality. You could use Blue Sky Plane to define and segment the bone, and then you could define the surgical guide. So that's another new feature that was recently added to the software. Going back to our topic, which was the placement, to summarize, placing a tooth is by pressing the tooth button with the red plus. You go to the panel, you select the teeth. You could choose between with roots or without roots. You could choose the general size. And we also mentioned that once it's placed in the widget, you could also modify the size of the tooth there. Just to review regarding this panel, the panel that we have here allows you to hide and unhide. So if we wanted to hide our virtual teeth or the implant, and things are very easy to toggle on and off, including the tooth and the implant and everything else, the nerves and everything else. Okay, so that is our virtual teeth. I'm going to jump now and discuss what we had mentioned towards the beginning, which was our screenshot and report generation functionality. Every view has our little icon of a camera next to it. And when you click on it, you could save a screenshot for that view for just the image you're viewing right now, or you could save the screenshot for all positions. If you do for all positions, it will go through all of the slices and put the screenshot into your basket. So let's go ahead and just hit save screenshot. What happens is it opens up our screenshot basket. So we could go ahead and we could put in different screenshots from different views, and it goes and it puts it in. If we don't like a particular image, we could remove it. If we do like it and we want to save just that image, we could save it. We want to remove all, we could remove all, or we could send it to the clipboard to use in other pieces of software. Let's go ahead and hit, we can also change the order of the different images. Let's go ahead and hit remove all, and we'll take a look at some of the buttons that we have on the bottom here. One of them is our drill report button. When you press this button, it automatically puts into the basket any image or any slice that has an implant placed in it. Okay, so that's a quick way of creating a drilling report with the images that have an implant in it. Another option is a CT summary report. And what this does for us is it basically generates a hardwired report into the system. That's ideal for analyzing the CT scan. Okay, if you're a scan center or if you're a dentist and you just want to get your traditional report from the CT scanner, it will show you the different slices, the different cross-section slices that you usually view, and it just creates that report automatically. Now, while that's processing, we have the option to save the images, to save the reports. We have the option of PDFing it or printing it. Okay, what we can actually see in the bottom left is that it's running through, the software is running through the different slices, and it's creating our CT report. Okay, so it ran through the different slices, it put everything that we need into the basket for a standard CT report, and it asks us where we want to go ahead and save it on the computer. So that is our CT summary report. Let's take a look at what kind of reports we could customize or generate from the images that we have in the basket. So when you press the PDF button, for example, we have a screen that comes up, and here you could customize your report. You could decide how many images come up on the page, what the layout should be, what information should go into the header. You could just select the data fields, the patient name, the date and time, and it goes into the header. And here you can also change the font, the size, all that stuff is customizable, the header, the footer, what information we want in the report itself. So you have an info section. You could decide what to put into the info section. You could decide if you want to include an implant list, which will show the implants that were treatment planned in the case. And we can also decide on the image itself what indications we want. If you want the slice position, the scale, all that stuff is customizable, and you could use it to customize the report that you want to generate. Okay, the last topic that we're going to be discussing, as we're running out of time, is importing a model. We're jumping to a different case. The reason we're going to discuss importing a model is because it's important. Generally, it's often used after the treatment plan is completed, and you want to import the model, then you could go ahead and do so. And the reason one of the reasons I want to discuss it, even though it's a little bit possibly in the direction of guide fabrication, is because if you get a couple of pointers, then it's a quick and easy process. Otherwise, it might take a bit longer. So generally what I do is I go ahead and press the isolate button to isolate the relevant jaw, to clean it up. We could raise the density threshold. Also, if there's scatter or anything else, you can raise the density threshold. Why? Because the teeth have a higher density. When we're doing the merge, generally we're going to be using the crowns to do that. So you can raise the density threshold to get rid of anything else. You could turn off any implants, you could turn off any nerves, and do it that way. We could go to File, Import STL Model, select the model that we want to import, and press Open. What's going to happen now is the software throws it into the treatment, throws it into the software, into the treatment plan, and now we're going to align it. The best way to do that is by clicking points. Our model alignment or model manipulation panel just opened automatically, and then pressing the align button. The software is going to open for us a view that shows us both the CT of the patient and the scan of the model next to each other. We're going to identify a few points that are easily identifiable in both scans, and then the software is going to do the merge. Here we're able to manipulate using any of the mouse functionality. We want to identify at least 5 points that we could see easily and quickly in both scans. When we want to mark a point, we hold down the Shift key and left click. Okay, the order doesn't matter. We could do one in one view, one in the other view, or we could do all of them in one view, then go on to the other view. What is important is to distribute the points throughout it. Mesial, distal, buccal, lingual. The more accurate your points placement are, and the more distributed they are, the better your merge is going to be. Okay, I'm doing this quickly. When we're done, we press the OK button, and we see that the software just did the merge between our CT scan and our STL model scan. A word about confirming the merge. You could do that just by clicking on the model outline button here, and we could see the outline of the STL model in the 2D views. And a good way to confirm the merge is by looking around the areas where there are teeth in the 2D views, and you want to see that the outline hugs the teeth tightly. The reason we're checking where there are teeth is because in areas where there aren't teeth, it's understandable that there's a difference between the scan of the model, which will include soft tissue, and the CT scan, which may not include soft tissue. So we could go around the arch, checking the merge is okay. We could also look in our axial view as we get closer to the occlusion, and we want to see again that the outlines are hugging the teeth tightly. We can also see in our 2D view that the merge was visually, we could see that the two scans overlap and correspond accurately. Okay, so that was just a word about importing a model. Again, it's generally done after the treatment plan is completed to help with accurate guide fabrication. We're going to go into more detail next week on the live video training regarding guide fabrication. A couple of words about learning the software or getting support. First of all, in the software, we have a very detailed help file. You go to help, show help, we'll open up a PDF that's really broken down step by step. That's one avenue to learn the software. Another avenue is to view the video tutorials. The page that we're looking at now is the homepage for everything related to guided surgery. We went to the Blue Sky Bio website, clicked on software, and we got to this page. So we have an option here for view video tutorials, learn how to use the software. Each video is a couple of minutes. You can see it's broken down by functionality, loading DICOMS, the panoramic curve, anything like that. Each one's a couple of minutes long, so that's a good option to review or learn particular functionality. We also have recorded webinar presentations. We have a list of them, which you can access through here. We have on learning the software, on guide fabrication, on clinical treatment planning, on advanced surgical techniques. So this is a very good resource as well. Another way is contacting us, contacting me. The phone number is right here. We could set up a time to go through the software together. If you have any questions, you could just give me a call, or via email. We're generally quite responsive via email as well. You'll get a quick response. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps things up. Don't forget to put your details into the webinar attendance form. Again, the links for that were sent with the viewing links in the email. Also in the comments section underneath the video screen that you're looking at now, there should be a link for that. To make sure to do that today if you want to get the CE credit sent to you. The credit will be sent to you via email. If you don't have it within a week, then you can email us. You should have it within a week. If you don't, then maybe it went to your spam box, or we could resend it or anything like that. That's it. Thank you very much for attending. If you have follow-up questions, please contact me directly. Be happy to help. And enjoy using the software. You can go ahead and install the software on as many computers as you like in your home, in your office. There's no limitation. And that's it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy using the software. Don't forget to check out our implants on our website, blueskybio.com. Thank you very much, and take care.